All right, welcome to Peacemaker 360. My name is Christian Chito. I'm the program advisor for Conducive Space for Peace, a Danish-based organization that works on transforming the global peace building system to promote the agency of local peace builders. Today, we are having a very interesting and great panel to take us into the second live streaming of our conversations with local peace builders around the world who are responding to COVID-19. Now, before we get into the conversations today, I also want to tell you, if this is your first time to join the call, that we've had already one live streaming. You can see it in our video section, but I also want to remind you that Conducive Space for Peace, Peace Direct, and Humanity United have recently published a report in which they talked to 400 local peace builders, sharing their perspectives and insights on how they are responding to the current pandemic. So I'll leave the link to that call, to that report in the comment section, and you can be able to access it at any time. All right, now without further ado, I'm going directly to our esteemed panelists today. I'm sorry we're not able to have the call last week, but today we're going to have to continue and to have this conversation. So maybe let's start with a very simple introduction. Tell us where you're from and tell us what you do, and just briefly tell us, how has the pandemic affected you personally? If you can do that within 1 minute, that would be highly appreciated. Carine, I will bring you in just about a few minutes, all right? Let's start with Cynthia. You can go first.
Okay. My name is Sinthya Rubio. I'm from Colombia. I'm working right now at the Truth Commission. I'm the coordinator of life course and disability group. That means that this includes children and youth and elderly and people with disabilities. And well, the COVID. I mean, personally, I have to say I'm a lucky person, and I have the main things I need, like basic food and all. So it's quite good actually for me. I like it just to stay home and work and have time to do many things, but it's not the same thing for many people. So, but for me, it's good.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Cynthia. Let's hear from Farida as well. How are you doing, Farida?
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. This is Farida Amiri from Afghanistan. Currently, I'm running an initiative called Peace Friends. This is a volunteer youth-led and youth-focused initiative that aims to promote peace building among the young peace builders. Also, I'm doing my second bachelor in political science and public administration at American University of Afghanistan. I would like to take the opportunity and thank you, Christian, and the people and organizations involved in this initiative for providing us the space and the opportunity to share our insights, our perspectives regarding our activities, peace efforts, and also the effect of pandemic COVID-19. In terms of the effect of this pandemic personally on me, I would say at the very first and very importantly, it affected me psychologically, and it disturbs me psychologically because when it comes to the community-based life or looking at others, it really disturbs me because they face so many other problems, maybe more problems than I do have, and also for sure it affects our academic life and our career life as well. So doing online, or I would say virtual learning and virtual meetings or activities is a bit challenging when it comes to the context of Afghanistan, maybe countries like Afghanistan. So there are so many other challenges that I'm sure it will take time if I list all of them, but these are the major challenges that I personally face.
Totally in solidarity with you, Farida, and thank you for sharing. I want to now bring in our friend from Kenya, and I'll pull out a little bit of Cynthia so that we can have her in, and we'll get back to you, Cynthia, in a second. Please don't go away. Don't go to sleep yet. All right, so let's hear from Carine. Carine, you are joining us from Kenya. Can you please maybe introduce yourself and tell us how you're coping and dealing with the pandemic? Carine, can you hear us? Oh, Carine. Carine is not yet able to join us, but she should be able to join us in a second. Now, let's continue this conversation. Liliana, thank you very much for joining the call. I want to have to hear from you again, Farida, if you can maybe briefly tell us a little bit more about how you have seen this pandemic affect peace building overall in Afghanistan. We know actually that recently the US government had signed a peace agreement with the Taliban, and that was received worldwide as a very promising step towards lasting peace in Afghanistan. But in this current situation, how has it been? How has the pandemic affected the whole peace process there?
Well, I would say it is a good idea before coming to the effect of the pandemic on the peace process. I think it is good to have a very brief look at some facts regarding the U.S. Taliban agreement. So, in very general, in the agreement, there have been listed four components, four very key components and key facts about the agreement. First, it was promised by the parties that Afghanistan should not be used against US and its allies' security. And the next one is very important about the timeline for the withdrawal of our foreign forces, which can take place within 2 phases. The first phase will be done within 135 days, and a number of US forces have to withdraw from the country. And also the next phase is a bit longer phase that the foreign forces should leave the country in very simple word within 9.5 months. So the total timeline for the withdrawal of the forces is 14 months. And the third component is about the intra-Afghan negotiations. So it was scheduled that the negotiations should start on March 10th, but it did not start due to some political, I would say, reasons. And the last, but not the least, component of the agreement was about the comprehensive and permanent ceasefire that should be carried out by the Taliban. And it was the main component, and it was the main item in the intra-Afghan dialogue. So for sure, some of the conditions and promises have been met and have been considered, but some of them have not been considered. And these, though the Taliban promised to go for the ceasefire, but it only worked for the reduction in violence when it comes to the US. But still, I would say some weeks ago, they carried out their suicide attacks in some parts of the country, and we had the Afghan civilian casualties, and but due to the pandemic, they stopped. I would say for these recent days, and I would say maybe weeks, they stopped their suicide attacks in different corners of the country. And also some of the prisoners have been released from the prisons that was promised by the parties. And the withdrawal of the foreign forces have also been started. So, of course, the pandemic put everything in pending. First of all, the intra-Afghan negotiation has not started yet. And of course, this can be one small part of its effect in the agreement.
Totally. Thank you very much, Farida, for sharing that. And maybe you can relay a little bit of how has been the sentiment around people all across Afghanistan with regards to, first, the peace agreement, and also how this particular situation of the pandemic has affected not just the way to day-to-day living, but also the whole hope that people had for peace in this time.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
All right, so if you can maybe hold on that, and we will get back to you in a few minutes, Farida. I'm trying to see if we have Carine and Cynthia joining us, but they should be joining us in a second, hopefully. But in the meantime, Farida, maybe still staying with you because you're the one on the screen right now. I'm sorry, I'm going to be the one pointing to you because of still trying to see how the others join.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I want to hear from your work. If you can share a little bit about your work specifically, and if you can tell us in what ways has the pandemic affected you and your peace building work?
Well, the context of Afghanistan for sure is different from the context of other countries, mostly from the Western countries. While the pandemic is a challenge, it creates another obstacles, another challenges as well for us as a, I would say, activist, as a young peace builder. So right before the pandemic, the news of the pandemic, we as a group in the Peace Friends as an initiative came together and discussed on the programs or on the other initiatives that how we can promote in a very better way peace building process among our fellow generation. But when the lockdown period was announced by the government, and the pandemic got very, very serious, so of course, so many activities have been put in the pending list, and it also somehow locks the way for other young people to take part in the activities. And also another challenge is about the technical, I would say, technical assistance here. So the majority of people in Afghanistan, particularly young people, they are having struggle to have access to internet. So one another obstacle is the virtual way of being connected with our fellow young peace builders and also other young people who can be part of the peace building activities and process. So it is time consuming and it needs more support in order to provide the prerequisites for such virtual activities for the for the community. The first can be the internet and power issues. So these all are the prerequisites for having virtual and online sessions or activities. So these are the very big part of the challenges that we as young peace builders and as a young people face during our activities and performances for the peace building.
Thank you very much, Farida, for that very comprehensive elaboration on the challenges that young peace builders are facing in Afghanistan. You've talked about the inability to access the internet. You've talked about technical assistance issues, which has been also hampered as a result of lack of support and international withdrawal during this particular time. Now we're having our very amazing panelist who has joined us, Carine. Thank you very much for tuning in. And we're really happy to have you. And can you please maybe briefly introduce yourself and tell us where you're calling us from?
Hi guys, my name is Carine Umutoniwase. I am a young peace builder calling from Kenya. I'm a Rwandan by birth. I am so sorry. So one of the effects I'm currently facing is power shortages because of the issues that we're having here. So I've been on and off because of the power going on. But my sincere apologies, Christian. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure being here. And I was following the conversation with Farida. It's an honor meeting you, Farida. Thank you.
Thank you.
Fantastic. No, we are really sorry for that, because we know this is not just a challenge for you. So many of our online viewers as well are facing a lot of difficulties to connect. But maybe a particular question directed to you, Carine, if you can take us through this. You're from Rwanda and you currently work in Kenya. And we know that this moment means a lot to Rwandans all around the world, because it's remembering again the terrible years of the genocide that happened in 1994. I don't know to what extent have you been connected to this remembrance period, and if you can tell us in what ways has this particular moment meant for you, and also the pandemic, how has it affected you personally?
First of all, it's to my nation, and during this time of remembrance, I think it's a very complex time this time around, with the lockdown being enforced in Rwanda, and with cases on the rise across the African continent. So we're not only remembering the people that we lost in 1994 as a result of the genocide, but we're also remembering those that are continuing to fall victim to coronavirus, not just in my country, but also across the continent. So my heart goes to my family back in Rwanda. My heart goes to all the people that, to all the 118 affected people with corona in Rwanda, and the 191 in Kenya. To everybody who is in a space where they feel like they're confused, that's one of the things that the pandemic has sort of brought globally, to sort of had a global confusion, because halting of things abruptly. So my heart goes to my people in Rwanda. I lost family back then, so I'm joining you, even despite me being far. We remember, we unite, and we never forget what happened. And so that's how we are taking this. And in terms of the effect that the pandemic has had, personally, I think I don't know. I'm used to our work as peace builders is people based. It's relationship based. We have to cultivate and nurture this relationship over years, over a period of time. And when we're not able to see or sit down and be able to interact with the people that we serve, it becomes a bit hard for us to sort of do our work. So I would say the halting of projects, of businesses, has sort of affected a lot of things, and sort of affected also our mentality in terms of where we were seeing the year going. In Kenya, we are preparing for elections. So even elections is sort of playing during this time with the response that's being given. So we are mindful. I just feel like there's a lot of confusion. We had not seen this. A lot of things have had to change, and we've had to learn and relearn and unlearn certain things. But it's hopeful. It's hopeful. That's it from me, Christian, for that.
No, thank you very much for sharing that indeed, Carine. I just wanted to bring that also into the context of the conversation that Rwanda is going through this remembrance period. And I know it means a lot to not just Rwandans, but to all that fight against genocide. And I believe this is a moment that we all pay respect to, not just here at Peacemaker 360, but also as organizations that care about this particular incident that happened. Now, we are continuing this dialogue. I just want to thank all our online viewers who are tuning in. We have Najib Jashmidi, who has joined us, and we have Liliana Pimenter, we have El Haj. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you for tuning in. If you have any questions or any comments as well regarding this conversation or anything we're discussing here, maybe also share a little bit more about how the pandemic has affected you personally and how you're responding to it in your own context. That will also enrich the discussion. Now, I want to move to the second segment of our conversation here. And because both of you are actually young peace builders, I had a question that I wanted to bring forth to you. This was actually some of the findings that we had during the online consultation that just got finished. The report was published just this week by Peace Direct, Conducive Space for Peace and Humanity United, highlighting how local peace builders are responding to COVID-19. And some of the findings that relate particularly to youth and peace building, it says, for example, youth and especially female youth who are living at home are in increased risk
I don't know why I cannot hear.
Subject to domestic violence when whole families are at home and struggling to survive. Now, the point about struggling at home, I don't know to what extent this has been brought to your attention, Carine, how women particularly and young female peace builders are facing challenges of being at home. What are some of the gender issues that have come to or been brought to your attention as a result of the lockdown measures?
Thank you, Christian, for that question. And I think this is something that we're currently still assessing, but there's definitely an increase in gender-based violence since the lockdown has been enforced. And I know that one of the youth groups that we work with in one of the slums in Nairobi called Korogosho has been having a challenge sort of trying to talk to the young women that they work with, trying to provide some sanitary towels for the young women that they work with, because being stuck at home having nothing to do means that they're continuously facing verbal abuse. They're continuously there was a report recently I read on the news that there's increase in rape incidences as a result of this. So I would say yes, young female youth are struggling at staying at home. There's a lot of dynamics that we usually do not put in place or sort of foresee, and that is some of the things that continuously have impacting us. Specifically living in Africa, where the patriarchal culture is still something that is very live and active in our societies. I can imagine a home where you're constantly being harassed. I can imagine where you're constantly feeling like you cannot make ends meet since you're not allowed to go outside, yet you have kids to feed. We're seeing cases of single-headed families, especially young female single-headed families, struggling really, really a lot. That's why one of the things that we're trying to do is to raise resources to support young female mothers at this point, because we understand that with the lockdown, with the containment of areas such as Nairobi, it's becoming hard for them to make ends meet, which means that they might be forced to turn to other means so that they can be able to feed their families, to feed their kids, which means that they're continuously putting themselves in danger. This is a phenomenon, like I said, that we're still following and closely trying to understand how we can address it. But yes, I do agree. There's an increase in rape cases. There's an increase in gender-based violence, in domestic violence, as a result of the lockdown and the containment currently happening in Nairobi and 3 other counties. Thank you.
No, thank you very much for sharing that, and thank you also for relaying on how your initiative is trying to raise funds to support especially women who are facing this particular gender violence in this particular moment. To what extent, Farida, has this been also part of your current context, where women are experiencing some kind of domestic violence as a result of the lockdown measures? Has this also been brought to your attention at this front?
I'm not sure, Kristen, if you can hear me, but
Yes,
I
we
do
can
have
hear you.
difficulties with hearing you. I think I have to connect and reconnect. Oh my God, technology is crazy sometimes.
No worries.
My
Did you
apologies.
hear me, Farida? Did you hear me? Or she's got disconnected. But this is also part of the challenge. She brought it up earlier, that we are all struggling to stay connected because so many of us don't have necessarily access to internet. But let's continue this conversation, Carine. And one of the questions that was brought during the online consultations was, what should we do as local peace builders and international actors really interested in supporting local peace builders around the world? In your own context, what do you think is needed the most to make sure that the work you're doing gets given a push?
Okay, so let me be honest with you, Christian. I think one of the things that I'm very cautious to is being intentional with my engagement as a young peace builder. In terms of what should we do as local peace builders, one thing that I've seen COVID-19 do is expose the divides and the fragmentations that we already had and the issues that we already had that posed challenges to our peace and security before the pandemic hit. Now, with the pandemic hitting, it means that this, it's adding more tension to an already tense relationship in the community, which means that if there are issues that we had also not addressed back then when it comes to resource distribution, it means that now they're also coming into play when it comes to engaging in the community. So my challenge has been, and I think I'm continuously telling this to many young peace builders, we are often called to address the root causes of conflict, the root causes of issues in our work. If we do not do this sustainably and we're not intentional to do this, 5 years down the line, something else will come, not Corona, and it will expose the same challenges that we've been having with peace and security in our societies. What currently doing as Footprints for Change, I remember I was doing a report about a day or two ago, and our goal was clear. We wanted to address the root causes of Corona-related crime, violence, and injustice, because the same issues that do cause crime, violence, and injustice are still coming to play now, but even in a worse way, because there's the scarcity of resources. So people are rushing to get masks, are rushing to get water, are rushing to get this and that. and you know, they're still being distributed along the same injustice lines, along the same unfair systems that have been governing us, along the same corrupt systems that have been governing us. One of the other issues that we have in Kenya, and I think it was in the news, is that we had a 13-year-old boy who was shot by a stray bullet from one of the police officers. So we're seeing disproportionate use of force by police. This is nothing new. This is not a new narrative. The problem is we've never addressed the issue of disproportionate use of force by police, especially in poor neighborhoods. So we're continuously seeing the effects of these issues, even with the pandemic hit, and it's becoming worse. What I feel we can do as local peace builders is still try to go down to the roots, still try to understand contextually the issue that is in the community, and then try to address it, building collective problem solving with the community members so that they can be able to be part to build a lasting solution in the community. What international actors can do actually is help us amplify and help us put our governments to account when it comes to such things. I remember the UN was talking about responsibility to protect. I don't know if responsibility to protect is still coming into play at such a time where we're facing a global pandemic, yet we have instances of unjust, you know, of disproportionate use of force. How can international organizations help us hold to account our our government, such that we do not have human right violations, you know, escalating at this time, because, you know, we're not paying attention to human rights violations, we're paying attention to something else. So maybe to help us push as locals, international actors can help us push these narratives. They can help us have a collective response to this. They can help us get more funding, especially now with most programs stalled. We are going back to start fundraising from scratch to respond to this. We cannot use the existing budget lines because this was not anticipated. So if we can have more funds also being directed to youth-led, youth-serving organizations that are actually trying to offer humanitarian responses on ground, that would be really good, because we're facing a lot of disenfranchisement as young people as well. And we're doing a lot of amazing, great work on ground, but, you know, it's going unrecognized, it's going unnoticed. So yes, also legitimizing and helping to recognize and amplify more of such actions. Christina, I could speak the whole day about this, but thank you for that.
No, absolutely. And you've raised a lot of good points indeed. And I think all of the points that you've raised, one, first of all, highlighting the current rise in violence, that police brutality has been on the rise as a result of the lockdowns, not just in Kenya. We've seen the same kind of scenarios as well as in Uganda, where people have been basically being brutalized and whipped down because they are trying to survive. Otherwise, you know, some of these measures have had a very negative impact on communities in Africa. We are glad to have our friend Cynthia back on the show. Cynthia, welcome back. You're calling us from Colombia, and we're having this very exciting conversation with Carine and Farida, where we're looking at some of the findings that came from the recent consultations that Peace Direct, Conducive Space for Peace, and Humanity United conducted. And one of the findings actually was talking about how young peace builders, particularly women, are facing some challenges of being at home, where there is also some tensions related to gender forms of violence and domestic violence. But in your particular context in Colombia, maybe if you can tell us, how has the pandemic affected the peace process altogether? Because we know there's been a peace process ongoing in Colombia. And what has been the impact of the pandemic to the peace process in Colombia, and also to your work at the Truth Commission in Colombia?
Hi, thank you, Christian. Yes, actually, the problem here is the conflict is ongoing conflict. Has never stopped. So the FARC guerrilla group, the former combatant, they demobilize, but in the country, the different other groups, they were reconfiguring the space and taking other territories. So what we are seeing now is, even these days, day before yesterday, the ELN and other groups are still attacking communities. So what we are having problem here is that the violence hasn't stopped. Not for the peace agreement, not for the implementation of the peace agreement. So also something that we are trying to talk about when we are in transitional justice mechanisms, we talk about non-repetition or non-recurrence. And what we are talking about now in the Truth Commission is about non-continuation of the conflict. No? So it's very difficult, the situation of social leaders and former combatants, because they are killing former combatants and social leaders. And this violence hasn't stopped. So this is one really, really concern we have, because we're supposed to be writing and doing the research about what happened, but it's happening. So we are trying to say it's happening. So we can, of course, we are focusing on doing the research and going to the field and finding out what happened from 1958 to 2018. But now we are still saying it's happening now. So what can we do? So I have been thinking these days about the role of prevention in peace building processes. I mean, real preventive actions that even in theory and practice that is not happening, no, should have a role, and an important role in peace building processes, and that means funds for that also. Situations like COVID-19, but all other situations could happen in peace building processes. So what happened in Colombia, even I was telling you, day before yesterday, there was a community in Chocó confined by ELN. So we are still, this is really bad that we're still having new internally displaced persons every day. So and then some other things I have been thinking is what is going to happen with youth. Are they joining armed groups, other armed groups, because of the need of in this situation? What about trafficking? And you were saying about gender-based violence, and this is happening every day. I mean, the number of killings of women, they have increased in this crisis. So what we are doing now, I mean, a Truth Commission, how it's affecting the COVID-19 this year, 2020, supposed to be the strong year for the Commission to go out, to do the research, to have audience, to have workshops with the people, and we're at home. I mean, we did it last year, but our mandate will finish next year. So at the end of next year. So this is very worrying for us, for the research, for the report, final report, but still we are trying to do our best to, at this time, to analyze the information we have and trying to do the processing of information and try to start to write a report. That's what we are doing. But we are very concerned about, at least, I mean, I'm in charge of I say all the time, they are the most vulnerable, because they are children, youth, elderly, people with disabilities. Nobody cares for them, and social distancing is making them more vulnerable in this situation. And also we have another problem. Now, it's not related to the Truth Commission, but I wanted to say, because it's happening in the country, many people from Venezuela is going back to Venezuela. So at least I felt that at the beginning of the situation, we feared that was having, this will create xenophobia or something. At least it's not happening, but the situation is so precarious for them that they are going back to the previous situation that was really bad, actually. So because the government, and we cannot adjust, the government can't afford to have this attention to all of them, to Colombians and to Venezuelans. So this is very worry also, because they are going back. So there are, of course, humanitarian efforts and relief efforts, but still they are just walking back to Venezuela, to that situation where they didn't have food, didn't have basic services. So we don't know what is going to happen with them. Of course, many of them, they were Colombian and Venezuelan. It's like we are brothers. I mean, it's like, you know, Colombia, you know how close it's from Venezuela, and it's like, I mean, we are the same. So it's really worried that they are going back, because we don't know what situation they are going to face there. So, yeah, tell me.
No. Thank you so much for sharing that, Cynthia. Indeed, there are so many issues that you've raised. First of all, related to the Colombian peace process and how, even despite the crisis, even despite the ceasefire that actually Antonio Guterres, who is the Secretary General of the UN, has passed to actually call for warring parties around the world to stop the violence during this crisis, you still are experiencing cases of armed violence in Colombia, ELN armed groups still attacking. And I think this is something that we need also to highlight, that in context of violence or in context of conflict, the pandemic has actually exacerbated, because it's actually made it easier. We remember talking to our friend El Haj from Mali last week, and he was talking to us exactly about the same problem. Armed groups are taking advantage of the crisis period to basically build and bolster their groups. But let me bring Carine into the conversation here, because we've been talking about issues related to funding as well and needing to support local peace building in your country. But one of the findings that actually came from the consultations was that we needed to increase support for local peace building. And as you might know, as a result of the crisis, so much attention has been focused on public health or development programs or relief programs, as you pointed out as well, Cynthia, but not as much on local peace building. So there is kind of a tendency among funding organizations, funding institutions, to focus away from peace building. And we see that as a tension. Maybe if you can share with us, starting with you, Farida, because you've joined us, in your context in Afghanistan, how has it been like? Who are the donors who are supporting local peace building in this moment? And how are local organizations finding funding for their work during this crisis?
Thank you for your question, Christian. As you have highlighted that a very huge attention is paid to the healthcare because of the pandemic. So I would say it in a very general scale. For example, the World Bank supported and funded Afghanistan to fight the pandemic, but there is a very I would say I cannot give a very concrete example that how the donor countries or other financial supporters decided to support the local peace builders. So there, for me, there is no specific example. In no media report has been shared regarding the support of the local peace builders. But though there have not been a huge support in this situation at the moment, so we do have some initiatives on back of our mind in order and I guess that this is the very good and the most appropriate platform for us to share that, and I'm sure that our voices would be heard and it will be also reflected. So in terms of the peace building activities and process, for as I have mentioned at the very beginning of the session, that one of the very prominent obstacles for us as a young and local peace builder is to make sure that everyone who is involved in the activity do have access to the internet and also the electricity. So UN, for example, I would say can have an initiative in order to provide young people with the technological facilities, or also maybe it can be an idea that through the animation, I would say, or maybe through online courses or an initiative, for example, like peace building and internet, can work in order to make sure the participation, the activity of or the participation and performances of young people when it comes to the peace building process. But of course, the challenge of facing with the not having stable financial support or I would say financial stability is a major, and it is not only limited to Afghanistan, but I'm sure it is also related to some parts of the world as well. So beside those challenges, to be very specific in terms of the local peace builders and our activities and our peace efforts, so this can be some other alternative in order not to stop our activities, not to get the pandemic as an excuse that due to the pandemic we have to stay home and we don't need to go for other initiatives or other ways to involve in the young people. I guess in terms of the psychological support, it also supports the young people psychologically, because they think and they come to the belief that besides staying home, we can be a very effective part of the society and maybe beyond the society.
Thank you very much, Farida.
You're welcome.
No, indeed, you've shared very interesting points, and I take note of 3 of them. One, you've highlighted the need for local funding institutions to invest more resources in contexts like these, because local peace building still needs to happen. And you've highlighted, for example, in your own context, that many people are not connected to electricity, don't have access to technology, and by supporting especially young peace builders who are stranded at their homes and are able to work in their communities in this moment by providing e-learning opportunities, then there could be it could have an effect on their psychological well-being, which is really a very interesting connection that you've made there, that it goes 2 streets. But I know, for example, in the Colombian context, that the Truth Commission has also been facing serious challenges of funding in terms of implementing its work. And I wonder to what extent, Sinthya, if you can enlighten us, to what extent do you think the pandemic has affected funding for the Truth Commission? And what is the future of funding for the work that you've been doing at the Truth Commission? What does it look like?
Well, we are being just in this lockdown only for 2 weeks now. So I think now in Colombia, we are in shock. I mean, there is no making decisions yet about the funding. We are still receiving funding. The same funding. One of the main concerns is that we won't have enough time to do our work. And we know that we are in this government that this government doesn't like the Truth Commission, doesn't like transitional justice mechanisms. So the commissioners are thinking to try to extend the mandate, ask for extend the mandate, but I think they will make it. I don't think the government will allow us to work more time, because also that means more resources. We're still having the funding, basic funding, and I'm sure we will have it. But the main concern is about the time. It's the time. But definitely we won't have the same impact we were thinking to have this year.
Yeah.
We cannot reach the people, we cannot go out, we cannot talk to them, we cannot just try to make their voice heard, that we are trying to do, especially in my case with children, youth, elderly, and people with disabilities, so that they are the most vulnerable of vulnerables. So we are worried about that, but also about, because we are like in a system, transitional justice system. So what is going to happen with the unit for search of disappeared, or what is going to happen with the jurisdiction for peace, that is like the judicial body of the transitional justice system. So at least they have more time, they have 15 and 20 years. But we know that we will have the funding this year, but we don't know what is going to happen next year.
Definitely. No, go for it.
No. That I was thinking, the question when I just talked to the boys and girls, and we talk and we have some kind of activities and programs, and I think I insist. I mean, in peace building processes should be included preventive actions and reiteration of human rights, but as a part, as a comprehensive peace building process. I mean, now is the COVID-19, but next year could be another situation. In 2 years could be another situation. So couldn't be happening that peace building processes are taking the funds or taken because there are something more important or urgent. So should be included and should be thinking what it really means preventive actions in peace building processes.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Cynthia, for joining us and for sharing that. Indeed, that's a very powerful point indeed in talking about prevention, not prevention just in terms of peace building work, but also because COVID-19 has taught us a big lesson that when we are facing a global pandemic, it affects all kinds of sectors. So even peace building is very much concerned. So we are now approaching almost to the end of our call today, but this is the time for our online viewers. I'm going to read some of the comments and points that have been shared by our online viewers. Welcome back, Carine. We're going to have our very last round of conversation here. Let's hear from Ryan. Ryan has said, youth-led peace building is so important. Thank you very much, Ryan, for sharing that. Najib Jamshidi, has said, as far as there is no exact cure for it, then we can't suggest exact way to the people. I think it might be very logical to isolate ourselves and make as much as we can to give awareness for the people are not aware, and social media might be a suitable solution. Basically, what Najib is pointing to is exactly the same point that Farida has highlighted earlier, that there is need to connect local peace builders through technology, because so much is happening on the ground, and if people don't have access to, don't have electricity, don't have access to technology, then it's really hard to share this. And thank you very much, Najib, for sharing that. Then we have Tony Dalton Obala, who said, you've answered and enlightened my question, Carine. You're receiving all the praises here, Carine. The number of deaths escalates higher, caused by violence, brutality than COVID-19. Carine has done an amazing job through sensitization of funds for the support of the less privileged, and a lot in the slums. The role the youth is playing is amazing. So this is really positive to hear that youth in Kenya and youth across the world really are playing a very critical role in this moment to respond to COVID-19. Now, in the very last minutes, we're having about 4 minutes to go. I would like just to give the last round of words to our panelists. Maybe in closing, if you can say what word do you leave to local peace builders? What advice do you leave to local peace builders, to international donors who are interested in supporting local peace builders in this time? And what word of maybe of comfort do you give, especially to those who have lost their loved ones as a result of the pandemic? Because we also need to show support and solidarity, knowing that many people are suffering and in pain at this time. Maybe we can start with you, Carine, because you've joined us right now.
Thank you so much, Christian. And again, my sincere apologies for me being on and off with the internet. And in terms of the last words that I would have, I think, to local peace builders, generally to the world, I think one thing that Corona has done is that it has leveled the playing field in so many different ways, whether it's between the rich and the poor, between the powerful and the less powerful. We are all, for the first time ever in history, at the same place, at the same power, being affected by the same thing. This, for me, calls into question the aspect of Ubuntu, the aspect of Ubuntu. I am because you are because I am. So let us remember that in whatever we are doing, it has an effect to the other person. It has a direct impact to either make someone smile or make someone sad. I would encourage local peace builders this is the time for us to get closer to our community. This is the time for us to continue investing into continue investing into addressing the issues that have for so long stalled peace and development and security in our communities. This
Thank you.
Time for us.
Go ahead, Carine. We kind of lost you there for a second, but you can continue.
Wish 100%,
All right. I think we're having a little bit of a problem. Carine, can you hear us? Well, Carine is having a little bit of a challenge with the internet, but her message was very clear. And basically what she's pointing out for us is to remain solid, to build solidarity, because this is affecting everyone. No one is really immune from the impact of the pandemic, and we need to build solidarity across boundaries. Carine, you're back. Can you hear us again? All right. No worries, as Carine is trying to reconnect.
Do you hear me?
Carine, are you there? All right, maybe we can hear from Sinthya as we're waiting for Carine to reconnect. If you can give us maybe in few words an advice to local peace builders, an advice to international donors and international institutions, and also a word of comfort to those who are in pain and those who have lost their loved ones as a result of the pandemic.
Definitely, thank you, Christian. Now, definitely for young, well, also old peace builders, is to be strong, I think this is the time when you have to make the biggest effort just to keep working. And I think we're starting this week, we try to just connect all the young people we are working at the Truth Commission. And what we are doing is just sending them messages that we are with them and that everything they need, just tell us. Of course, there are problems of connectivity, of electricity, internet, but we are trying to give them a message that we are there. So I think listen to the others, send them messages, and make them know that you are there is important at this moment, even if you cannot go there, but you can just say to them that you are there. And I think to international donors, really, I insist. I mean, this should be an opportunity, and it's a lesson. I mean, peace building processes are fragile. So we need to build, I mean, in theory and practice, how preventive actions and how prevention plays an important role in peace building, and should be there, and should be the funding for that. And to build innovative efforts to communicate with others, to face these situations that can happen.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. Thank you very much, Sinthya, again for joining us all the way from Bogota, and thank you for sharing with us today. It's been really wonderful. We're going to bring in Carine into the conversation, but you can now go and take your nap, Sinthya. You've done an amazing job.
Bye.
All right.
Thank you.
Farida as well, if you can maybe give us your final words in terms of what do you say to local peace builders, to international donors, and if you have any words of comfort to those who have lost their loved ones as a result of the pandemic, that will also be welcome. Don't worry, Carine, we have been struggling with internet everywhere around the world, so take it easy, okay? All right, Farida, we're listening to you.
Thank you so much, Christian, and my apologies for the connection issues. Well, this is a very very difficult situation, I know, for everyone. But let's try to spread love, and I do believe that love is more contagious than COVID-19. So stay with each other, stay connected through the channels we do have access to. I know there might be a few numbers of the channels that we can be connected, but still it can work, and we can help each other to make channels for each other. Addressing to the international donors, or I would say international community,
we're having a little bit of a problem there as well with our friend Farida, but she has sent a very strong message. What I took note of is love is more contagious than COVID-19, and that we need to stay connected with each other in solidarity, especially in this time. Thank you very much, Farida. And this has really echoed very basically the sentiment that we've all been trying to pass around the world. We are all facing as a global community a difficult pandemic, and we will need each other, not just now, but even beyond. Let's hear from Carine, maybe your final words to local peace builders, international organizations working with local peace builders, even donor institutions in this time, as well as if you have any words of comfort to those who have lost their loved ones, if you may.
Kindly allow me to start the other way around and see if this goes through. So first, maybe to the victims, to those who have lost their loved ones, we continue to pray that God may comfort you, that God may surround you and fill you with His love. These are very confusing times, and yes, we're praying for you. We are here to spread hope and spread love through these difficult times. For international donors, honestly, Christian, I just have one simple ask. We have for years seen the unequal distribution of resources and aid that has come to do more harm than good. During this time of COVID-19, I know that what we need is help and what we need is aid, but we also don't need aid that comes to make things worse at the community level, or comes to make issues and the society more aggravate them. So I would call for global solidarity when it comes to a collective response to COVID-19, that the resources that are being distributed may reach the most need, those are most in need, that it may be fairly distributed and equitably distributed, especially putting into considerations those that cannot afford the measures that are currently being put in place. For the local peace builders, guys, this is our time. This is our time for us to keep digging, to keep investing, to keep getting our hands dirty. We need to keep getting our hands dirty so that our communities can come at the end of the day clean, can come out peaceful. So let's not get tired right now. And I know I would urge everybody to stay safe, to put on your mask, wear your gloves, keep the social distancing that is necessary, even as you engage to help those in your communities. But let's not shy away from still addressing the issues that are causing conflict and violence in our community, even as of now. And yeah, let us talk to each other. I think as local peace builders, we often are mostly in our heads and in our work. We forget to look up and say hi and to smile. So look up, say hi, and smile. I wave at someone because you cannot high five now, but let's just so spread hope and encourage each other as local peace builders. So thank you so much, Christian. Also sending love to you for such a platform, for giving us this opportunity to be able to share. So thank you so much, and I pray that everybody here and as a continent, that we may remember who we are, why we are here, and remember to stay safe and spread hope during these difficult times. Thank you so much, Christian.
Thank you very much, Carine, for your words of kindness and support and solidarity as well. And thanks for reminding and echoing that message that even when we are giving aid, even when international funding is coming to support local peace builders, it needs to be done in a way that is fair, in a way that is equitable, and in a way that does not lead to more harm in the communities, especially for those who have already felt the most pain from this pandemic. Now, we are closing eventually the show. I just want to thank as well our online viewers and everyone who has followed into this conversation. Thank you for joining. Thank you for sharing your comments. We are going to continue this call every Saturday. Tune in at 3 p.m. CET. And we'll be having different kind of guests who will share their experiences. And please, let's remember what Farida has just shared. Love is more contagious than COVID-19. And Farida is here again. Maybe she can echo what she wanted to say more properly before we close the show. Farida, people wanted to hear your final words. Sorry for the internet there as well.
I hope this time the internet will be kind with me, including others. I was in the middle of my message and something went crazy. So the international donor, I would say they, at this very critical and difficult time, they not only address the government to support people and communities in different ways for different reasons. They can also look up on our activities through the I would say social media platforms. Yeah, social media platforms is I think is the best channel for us to reflect what we do and what we go through. So I think if they consider a mechanism, or I would say a policy to look at our activities through the social media platforms, I think they can find more reasons to support us in terms of the financial and monetary support. And I would request everyone to stay home. I know it might not be logical to ask everyone to stay home, because some people are struggling to fight the pandemic and at the same time not to die from the poverty. I do understand, and I do stand with them, and I do feel them. but it is good for those who can consider the health instructions given by the authorities in order to keep themselves safe, their families, and the people who are around them. And I hope we will get out of this difficult time safe and with some achievements. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Farida, again for sharing that. And the message that I take from that as well is to remind all of us that we need to follow the precautions that have been put in place, because as much as it is a very confusing pandemic that affects people in different parts of the world differently, we still have a responsibility to take care of ourselves and to take care of those that we know are the most vulnerable in this time. As we finish, I want to thank Kayum as well, who has joined us from Bangladesh. Thank you for joining the conversation. This recording is going to remain on our page. If you want to watch it again, you can tune in anytime. I also want to remind, for those who are interested in continuing the conversation, we have created recently a platform where local peace builders all around the world are sharing news and resources to support each other in their respective work. So I will leave the link to that platform in the comment section, and if anyone wants to join, please click on it and we'll be sure to follow you and to be sure that you're part of the conversation. All right, that's all for today, folks. Thank you again, Carine. Thank you, Farida, for your time. This was really very insightful. Stay well, stay safe, and to those of our friends who are at home, are in pain, remember, we are not going to forget you. We care about you, and we have you in our thoughts and prayers in this time, and sending you love and strength in this very difficult time. Stay well, and talk to you next Saturday. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.